Um, my hair moves. I honestly have no idea why my hair moves. I mean, I kind of do, but it is what it is. There is no breeze in my apartment. I do not have the air conditioner or heater on. I do have the dryer going. But my hair moving, as much oil as I put in my hair, you would think, or at least I would think, that my hair wouldn't move as much. But it's almost like, Medusa going on and stuff like that. So anyway, and it's funny because I actually used to do a hairstyle when I was in high school that I essentially called Medusa or Twisted. There's a few different names I had for it. Anyway, so oh, it's so annoying. Anyway, so I figured in reference to a few different things. One being in regards to my Medal of Honor art project. Two, in reference to the aspects of the modern day book that I wrote, and in certain regards utilizing fail-safe in certain suggestions, I guess, at this point, and then certain hints in other ways, ironically, and finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining, and possibly even in my The Adventures of Susan MeeLing, Scuba Diver Extraordinaire. But in reference to my Medal of Honor art project, I understand that it's not necessarily the most normal art project that I had put together, and I also understand I also wrote the series, The Paroxysm of the Lotus, and back when writing the Finding a Silver Lining and Finding the Silver Lining, I had already finished writing the Curious Children book series. I just wanted to get everything I wanted to get everything. I kind of wanted to do it just where it was easier. That's actually, like, if you look at the Library of Congress registration, it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Curious Children book series volume 1, then the Curious Children book series volume 2, then Finding a Silver Lining, then Finding the Silver Lining, then the Kennedy Curves, the Failsafe series, or the Failsafe book, I should say. Failsafe, the Kennedy Curves fused with science fiction fantasy, then the Paroxysm of the Lotus. As far as like order of working on books and stuff like that, and like the publications and stuff. Anyway, but while working on my Medal of Honor art project, and that doesn't include like different poems that I had written and little short stories that I had done in regards to my original Fat Life account. I'd written a zoo story, and then I had done a few different ones where I just took words and then made a poem out of them, using the first letter of the word as it went down, and I guess that might be a cue thing. Not just with the little meme thingies and the ocean pictures and stuff, but getting back on point in reference to the modern day book and the recommendations, as well as some videos in regard to attempting to piece certain puzzle aspects together, and also the FOIA and FISA aspects, as well as it's a lot, despite the fact that I was only born in 1982, and then not forgetting that head injury thing on Palm Sunday in 2000. Kind of figured, especially more so in reference to the modern day book with the recommendations for different aspects. I can understand where, every single state throughout the United States of America would feel that they want, and they want their justice, which they deserve. They deserve their justice in regards to everything that occurred to my Medal of Honor art project. I understand that this is literally a aspect of legal precedence where everything is so multifaceted all across the board in every different way, and beyond in some ways defining domestic terrorism. I understand that. I also understand that, I have my issues with technology. And so there's that additional aspect in certain regards to the 5 that I originally had written about, and in regards to individuals and the physical, the mental, the emotional, the sexual, the spiritual. And then because of this era, you have to be acknowledging of the fact that you have technology in your life. I mean, despite, I've never denied in this era where there's so much as far as electric stuff, and literally electricity, but also the aspects of, I'm using a cell phone for the particular recording right now in order to look up my Medal of Honor recipients for my Medal of Honor artwork. I had to go through various aspects, and then every branch of the military being affected, every religion and spirituality being affected, including those, in reference to atheism, which is a non-religion, but has their own aspects of that. And I know that I cannot be the only individual who is absolutely flabbergasted as to the level of which certain individuals would go just purely out of hatred and their own individual choices for criminal intent, because they're so lacking of anything that has any human decency in them whatsoever, and trying to fill a void when all they had to do is look within to see, what they could possibly do. But instead of looking within to reevaluate their own lives, they chose to be such vile creatures they don't even deserve the term of human being because of what was done to the different areas of the Medal of Honor recipients. And that's a personal opinion. I can't be the only one. I don't think I am. But in regards to, I would guess to me that there are many, obviously if Washington State had, which I did see when I was in Senator Murray's office, she had a coffee table book of Medal of Honor recipients in the state. Apparently the neighbors in 736 would like to tap on the wall because they have nothing better to do with their own existences at this point. But anyway, irony of what I'm discussing, right? So, that literally just said. But anyway, so in regards to the aspects of what I saw in Senator Murray's office, when I went to the Seattle location, fill out the form and that sort of stuff, and seeing the fact that in her coffee book in her office, there was, I think, at least 200 names, but I only found 56 or 57 names for the entire state of Washington. And in that book, it said the majority of them were actually buried in Washington State. And so that being said, finding 56 57 in comparison to, I would guesstimate, at least between 150 to 200, possibly even 250. And then each state, I would guesstimate each number is different than what I found when I counted and did everything I could. As CDO as I am, I mean, some people have teased me and made fun of me over the years, and because of my memory deficits and cognitive disorders, and not forgetting, especially with the headaches, people who have headaches and migraines understand how easy it is to get off topic or off track and stuff like that. And so I can understand where every single state would feel that they have, and they do, literally they do. But then also, I guesstimate in this era, it's not as simple as when the original founding fathers and founding mothers put together the 13 colonies with, you know, the original sets of laws and Bill of Rights and the very beginning aspects, because it was the beginning, it was the, you know, the turning point, essentially, in the Revolutionary War. And, you know, General George Washington did not want to have to, he didn't even want to be president. He didn't want to be president. He is, and those who have studied history know that, you know, saw it coming, but at the same time didn't want to do it because, you know, wanted to, there were many reasons why he didn't want to be president. There were many, many, many reasons why he did not want to be president. I would guesstimate there are plenty of individuals who have been in various positions in politics that would very much be like, yeah, if I knew it was going to be like this, I thought it was going to be so much easier. Never mind. And certain aspects, of course, they enjoy their jobs and stuff like that, but then other points where they're like, ish, you know, that's, I mean, and it can't, I don't think it's just, you know, as far as, you know, elected officials or stuff. I would guesstimate there are plenty of even business owners that are like, so I was going to start out here. And once I got to here, everything was going to, and then, well, oh, I had another idea. And that would be, well, and then I had another, and just kind of spiderwebbed outward from there. You know, I mean, you could take another look at it in reference to, well, it was supposed to originally only be the Army. But then there's, you know, that whole coastline of the ocean. And, well, you know, it make more sense to have maritime efforts and keeping stuff safe. So there goes, you know, that aspect. And then, you know, as time progressed, you know, you got the airplanes and the space and the satellite stuff and so on and so forth, and intergalactic aspects of travel. And et cetera, although I don't know if that's where we're at this point just yet. I think we are. I think there have been some people who have traveled out well past, you know, I think so. I think there's a couple that have traveled towards the edge of the Milky Way galaxy at this point. But anyway, that aside, getting back on point. Or at least observed other galaxy locations at minimum. But anyway, so in reference to my Medal of Honor art project, and not wanting to deny certain things because of the realistic understanding that in certain ways the individuals, whether they started out of Illinois or whether they started out of the state of Texas, or people from Illinois contacted the people in the state of Texas and or New Jersey, whatever in that regard, and then, you know, extending on the realistic aspect too, because you can't just do things on the federal level, you have to start at the local level, I would guesstimate at this point, because back when the Revolutionary War was started, it was actually, the opposite way around. It was defining the country, defining the independence, defining the Constitution, defining all those different things. And then the states got to do, within, reason of the federal government and stuff. Then, after, the initial foundation was laid out as far as Washington, D.C., then, the individual states did what the individual states did within, certain levels. And so, in this era, it's apparently backwards, where, and not in a negative way in the aspects of each individual state as their own individual rules and regulations, laws, so on and so forth. But also still heeding to the federal aspects. And I would guesstimate in certain regards things have to go through the local state levels before being able to get to the federal level because of, what is it called, the circuit of courts or something like that, or circle or circus of whatever. I'm not trying to be rude to any judicial guys, lawyers, or anything like that, although I'm sure that there have been plenty of guys who've been like, I feel like this. You got the accordion briefcase, right? And so, almost make a joke in that regard-ish. And so, but on a more serious tone aspect, the aspects of the reality of how I wound up in Washington State, just despite the different aspects. I mean, and yes, it's not that I didn't enjoy the people that I got to know in Washington State, and it's not that I didn't enjoy the people that I got to know in the state of Texas. I do realize that I in order to clearly and concisely put stuff out there, not just verbally, but even the typing aspect, in a lesser amount of pain, I needed to be able to, essentially the irony, I can't go swimming right now, but immerse myself in the ability to assist with the memories to come back because of the Palm Sunday 2000 head injury stuff. And while it's not that I was running from Washington State, and not just in the regards of the aspects of the electrical stuff, though I would also guesstimate that if Mr. and Mrs. Gates and Mr. Bezos and Mr. Zuckerberg and all the techie guy stuff all up on the West Coast, their stuff's probably working a little bit better right now. Because of the lack of surges hurting, and then, the headache, pain, and all that sort of stuff. And also, I think that in order for the precedence of essentially the irony in regards to the 151 Road Warrior aspect of that, for, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., if that is a portion where it ties in, it is a portion, and I think it does. I wouldn't be surprised. I would guesstimate that. But if multiple individuals had not only found out that however they found out about me winding up in Washington State with my son, if they found out so in certain aspects, and not in a compassionate, honorable, and righteous one way, but in a cherubim way, then, for example, the McMillan Mausoleum, and that, with that set of females and whatever. Not forgetting, I think that after my now ex-boyfriend broke up with me, when I was at the hotel in the Super 8, I could have swore I saw my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen's daughter, Sandra Murray. I could have swore I saw her either in the Supercuts and or the hotel. Like, just her face, just it was just that way. And so I wouldn't be surprised, at least. And in that aspect, I would, if I have to make recommendations, because it's just so much across so many different areas, understandably so, being absolutely infuriated, understood. I would have to say that obviously Washington State, in certain regards, because of it being a more centralized location for the first level, but then there's kind of, in certain regards, because of what occurred in Montana, the aspects in 2016 in that regard. And so I would have to say, in my recommendation and my opinion, while yes, I very much can see each state needing and deserving very much so, but once getting to the federal level, then that makes it even across the board of the map. But if having to make that ultimate choice in that regard, in those recommendations, for everything being in an all-in-one, in the physical, the emotional, the mental, sexual, but spiritual, as well as the technological, I would have to say either Montana State or Washington State. I have my own personal thoughts for each of those individual states. If Idaho, because Idaho is directly in between the two of them, is a more acceptable location, I understand that. I wouldn't mind being near Coeur d'Alene again. That's a personal preference, though. But maybe I can see that's you. I'm cutie patootie. You can see. That's me being selfish, though. I admit that. That would be pretty awesome. But in reference to if I had to choose or make, maybe, no, I shouldn't say choose, because ultimately it is up to the Senate and the Congress and the Vice President and the White House, because of it being such an overall sort of thing, and not forgetting the different local law enforcement guys and all of the branches of the military, and then the techie companies and stuff like that. I would have to say that though I had to put it in like a 1, 2, 3 sort of way, I would have to say that I would put Montana as the first choice, because of the aspects of the vortex. I would. That would be and that's mainly, and before anybody gets upset, that is mainly because of the fact that where I did go out to the Macmillan Mausoleum twice, when it came to my Medal of Honor art project trips, once I found the Montana vortex, I knew I had to go out there each time. And so that there is that realistic aspect. And so I would put Montana State as the first recommendation. I would put Washington State as the second recommendation, and not in a judgmental sort of way or mean or biased in any way, but in an overall aspect, because the fact that with what happened in regards to that traffic backup, Washington State in certain locations are accustomed to that sort of traffic. People in the state of Montana, I have a feeling, are not accustomed to that at all. I would guesstimate if they deal with traffic, it's usually most likely just in each of the individual towns, and it's not even that bad. And so, because of the hours and the miles and miles of traffic that I saw in my rearview mirror, or well, in the van's rearview mirror, I would have to make that recommendation that Montana would be the state for that, and then I would, as far as Washington State afterwards, because the only traffic that was realistically dealt with was in mainly Seattle and Tacoma, which they're kind of used to that. And while there was construction on 90 that was, essentially planned well in advance of my Medal of Honor art project. And so, while keeping in consideration of the fires, all three of those states dealt with fires. All three of those states, including Idaho, called 911, all that sort of stuff. And so, that is my personal recommendation, albeit a little bit selfish because of certain aspects, aside from hot CIA guy and cutie patootie Navy SEAL, and admitting the selfishness in regards to the Montana vortex, but that being a portion of it. And again, in regards to that traffic, I mean, I don't know what the average travel time from Kalispell to the two towns just before Arley, Montana is. But I would guesstimate it's not 4.5 or 5 hours. Even on a wintry, snow-filled day. I would guesstimate that. I could be wrong, I don't know. But that would be my recommendation if it's up to me for that sort of thing, and not in any negative aspect towards the state of Texas at all, not at all, but that aspect of Montana giving the ability for the assistance when it came to what Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr. and the 151 thing, and while the 151 aspect predates the aspects of, obviously, my Medal of Honor art project stuff, I would think that maybe both trials could be done at the same time, and bouncing off one another, or however that goes. But if the aspects that were used in reference to the 151 thing that Cactus Jack did, and he had admitted it in writing and or others when in reference to technology devices, having that as a precursor to assist in a different aspect, to assist in that regard. And since it would not be double jeopardy by technicalities, because he wasn't charged with anything, along with who was involved, with anything other than not having a parade license. However, the aspects of the rest of the information that wasn't necessarily known, and I understand again with the double jeopardy, but it wasn't every single county and it could be just one county for the city of San Antonio, but each individual and I did put it in writing, the aspects of the modern day book, the individual precinct sections for law enforcement, and then the 5 different military bases. Again, 5 different areas on top of all of that. And so I would think that, and again, there are plenty of lawmakers that would know far better in regards to the way that sort of stuff goes, but maybe that gives the individual, local, and going outward sort of way to assist with the legalities. But then again, I'm kind of partial to the UCMJ, because what roads in the state of Montana were not initially made by the Army Corps of Engineers? Same thing with the state of Texas, same thing with the state of Washington. But if having to go in regards to individual states, my recommendation are those 3 states. If it's in some ways more simplistic for essentially the Pentagon isn't that interesting, the 5 different military bases in the city of San Antonio and then the 5 sides to the Pentagon, if that's easier in that regard. But I understand that there's kind of that gray area in between, because there's some who are civilian and then some who do have the military background, but it doesn't change the fact that my Medal of Honor art project, and I've done a prior video in regards to the marker itself is property of the United States. I think it's either Veterans Affairs, which is still the government of the United States of America, but having the military association aspect. So if it can't immediately be in regards to the circuit court of whatever number and letter and precinct and all that stuff, and it's more simplistic, and then I would guesstimate in some ways that similarly to the state of Texas, in regards to law certificates or bar association stuff. I know the words are not like the best, but those who do the law stuff understand. I would guesstimate that Washington State would be more close to New York and New Jersey, where you have to have all of those credentials before you could ever do any legal stuff. And so the amount of individuals that have to be involved with that would be very difficult in certain regards. Whereas I would guesstimate Montana would be similar to the state of Texas, or maybe Idaho, or both, in reference to, as long as you have certain something with legal stuff, that it would be more simplistic and easier to set the groundwork for the states that have more stringent requirements for the different legal aspects before being able to go into a federal aspect, I guess is the way to put it. And so, and obviously Illinois would be similar in certain ways to New Jersey and New York. So I just wanted to make this quick little video on that, and maybe that assists to kind of, because obviously I didn't get to go through all of the 50 states to complete my Medal of Honor art project, despite looking up all of the numbers, so that way I could do my own planning. And if needing a 5th one to choose from, Nebraska, because of the solar eclipse. As well as the fact that at that one particular cemetery location, in the attempts to find the information, there was that tower there. Whereas in all of the other locations, they either had a map, a directory map, or there were people that I could ask, or they were smaller locations, so I didn't necessarily need anything beyond the information I had. So if needing that technological aspect, then the realistic points of Nebraska being another location for recommendations. So there's essentially 5 different choices instead of 50 or more by technicalities, technically. But you've got, in reference to the Pentagon and the UCMJ, because the UCMJ goes across every branch of the military. There is no difference between the UCMJ for the basic aspects of the Army in comparison to the Air Force, in comparison to the Coast Guard, in comparison to the Marine Corps, in comparison to the Navy, in comparison to the Space Force now. But as far as states, Montana and Nebraska essentially would be tied for that first place spot, and in my opinion. And then Washington State, and if needing the in-between aspects, Idaho. So hopefully that narrows it down, because I understand every state would want their aspect, and they have every right to. I mean, the people as they traveled through, of course, if they drove, if they flew, well then, if they flew, then that kind of takes the driving aspects out. But if they flew, then there's also that same technological area. But despite the fact that if they drove, and not to make any of the individual states that they could have driven through, by technicalities, me also being in that particular state during the Medal of Honor Art Project trip, in specific of going to get the Medal of Honor recipients' rubbings for the artwork in comparison to the aspects afterwards for the legal points, if that makes sense. Because I obviously drove through a lot of states after finding out from CID at JBLM in Washington State. So I'm going to leave that up to those who make those decisions. Obviously, they are the ones who make the decisions anyway in that regard, but hopefully that gives a more of a selection that is more finite in comparison to just, this state had this many Medal of Honor recipients, and going to, ironically, when the 13 colonies were first established and stuff, in regards to Senate and Congress. But in this regard, for Medal of Honor recipient number comparisons, to assist with that, instead of having that argument back and forth, where irony, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a guy from New Jersey who was like, hey now, little state, don't count us out. And so, hopefully that assists in that regard. That makes it easier, hopefully. Because then instead of 50 states plus all of the other jurisdictions, you have those as well as the UCMJ. And so, and while I understand the FISA and FOIA court stuff technically is done and filed in the initial state of starting, but it essentially goes to Washington, D.C. Because of the federal level, but also the state levels. Hopefully that clarifies things and makes it easier. A little bit at least. You guys have a good one.